Hey guys, how's it going? iStar here and welcome back to another video. Now I'm gonna do another full review video, and this one will cover the recently finished game Yakuza 0. Now I'm gonna be doing the PC version of this review. I'll be expressing my thoughts in depth of how the story and gameplay is done. If you like what I'm doing, please hit the like button, and if you're new here and want to see more, please hit the subscribe button, turn on notification bell as well. And if you want to leave any comments down in the comment section down below, please do so as well. And before we really dive right into the video, there will be many spoilers being spoken here in this video. So spoiler, as well, all I speak in this video are my thoughts, feelings, and analysis of this, and may not be 100% the truth. I am no expert, so this is all within my own personal review. Listen at your own discretion. Now, let's not delay and get right into the review. So I'll be first breaking this down to different categories to make things easier for you to follow, and so that it wouldn't be just pure ramble without any structure. Here are the categories I'll be covering: game mechanics, lore, sounds, and compatibility. Some of these categories will have subcategories so we can further grow in depth with this review. Now, let's first start with the first category. Game mechanics. As always, is one of the more important topics to cover, as this will give us an idea of how this game is run by looking at how the game is built. So we'll be using these subcategories to help guide this portion of this category. Animations, types of game modes, resource management, and power management. To give this a start for this, we'll begin with animations. Yakuza 0 is one of the older versions of this game. Originally released in 2005, this game was remade and adapted for the newer game engines and released in 2015. Because of this, many of the animations are much more up to date and smoother. However, I do see there are some less fluid animations still presented. For example, when you're in a fight with one of the goons or perhaps a boss, the response time in fighting is certainly less than appealing. It is very simple battle mechanics and perhaps not the best in this current time. Running around and moving around is also not exactly the best, as the camera is locked in place when you get out of a place and are forced to run out of the street to get a better camera angle. One of the better things I find for Yakuza 0 is the cutscenes. Those are done very fluid and smoothly. Cinematic wise, I felt extremely engaged with perspective and positioning to the focus on the character. However, sometimes I do see there is an occasional slight off-sync of lip movements with the speech. It was minimal, but it did little to bother me. The environment was pretty basic for the animations. While the buildings and other parts were as to be expected, the people walking around the city were just basic. As the player walks around, when you bump into them, the animation is simple too. It wasn't too bad, and it was done enough that it wasn't too out of touch. However, for a game remade to match modern engines, I will admit that there are other parts in the game that does make up for its less than decent animation errors. It can't be helped that the creators of that ported game wanted to try to keep the original game true to its originality for those fan lovers who wanted to play this game again. It's an extremely engaging game and not to be ignored. The next subcategory is types of game modes. This is a single player game with a third person view of playing the game. You are seen in third person with the camera behind the main characters, giving you the chance to also move the camera around to see in front of the character. They have done a fair job in keeping it mostly flexible and playing without too much difficulty. Finally, we touched on resource management and power management. Now this one was interesting and very intricate when I first used it. How Yakuza 0 uses their method of giving power to the characters was by making money, and a lot of money, through the means of fighting enemies and gaining money in that way. The more you fight, the more money you earn to buy food, upgrades, and buy gifts for sub-stories or main stories. It was through this method that you are able to have the main character grow stronger and more powerful. However, the flaw in this system is that the money expense to spend on is extremely high, and you have to also find other means such as doing business, retailing, buying properties in order to earn more money to grow your ability even more. What I find more difficult is the cost too. The money cost to get your upgraded skills and more powerful moves is quite expensive, and thus would spend a lot in order to gain that achievement. In some ways, I struggle to find higher faster without the means of expense through earning in fights, business dealings, and host clubs. Nonetheless, it was a very creative method for going this route to try and make this game system unique. Lore. In this section, I'll be using the following subcategories to cover more so we can dive more in depth. Story, characters, and character developments. Let's first start with the story. I will save you the pain of reiterating the story and get right into it. I definitely feel as though Yakuza 0's story is its strongest point. Each character is carefully crafted together and you feel as though you have some form of emotional connection with them as though you're a part of their lives. Each person you listen and hear their stories are extremely in-depth and held a much more deeper meaning and layered than you ever thought to be. The story you thought was once simple turned into extremely complex. The creators have done a phenomenal job in crafting the pacing and the feel to the story. While it is slow, you're immersed to the story where you cannot help but feel you want to know more. A few examples I can give are the background of Tachibana and Makoto. The creators kept them both a mystery, making the audience think that they might not be related only for the story to unfold that they are very much related, and deeply so. It ended with Tachibana's life taken and Makoto scarred and in deep emotional distress. It was heartbreaking at that moment, and I admit I was very emotional in those cutscenes that were shown. Another one is the story of Dojima family and the Tojo clan. While all this is happening, there are great tensions happening in the clans and the fight of power to see who can claim the next throne. Because of this struggle of power and needs, the story is shaped to where it went, where Sarah eventually became the next chairman for the Tojo clan, and many other movements and changes took place. While I'd like to name more examples of the story that were extremely engaging, it will probably take me more than just this video here for me to point out all of them. Again, I'll save you the trouble of hearing all that and move on. My point here is that the creators have created 17 chapters of the story to craft in a way where it was paced and the player can feel extremely engaged with it. There are many cutscenes in story, but it's balanced with gameplay as well. I think the creators have done a good job in balancing both without making it too overbearing or thinking it was too much. Naturally, there was a huge climax at the end of the story where it ends with Kiryu fighting Shibusawa to stop him altogether in achieving his plans. As every main character goes, he did his job, and Majima also did his job invading the Dojima headquarters to stop Dojima himself and his private assassin Lao Gui. Each story had a fitting piece to the puzzle until the picture was perfectly clear cut. All in all, the creators did a fabulous job in creating the story of Yakuza 0. Next is the characters. We are introduced to many characters in this game. Now I struggle on this part on how I want to approach this, as there are a lot of characters being introduced, and all play a key part of the story of this game. However, after some thought, I decided it's best approach with addressing the main, bigger characters that I think are relevant and more important to the story growth. We are introduced to Kazuma Kiryu, Goro Majima, Tetsu Tachibana, Makimura Makoto, Wenhai Lee, Juan Ora, Sohei Dojima, Futoshi Shimaro, Tsukasa Sagawa, Daisuke Kuze, Hiroki Awano, Keiji Shibushawa, Masaru Shira, Akira Nishikiyama, Shintaro Kazuma, Osamu Kashiwagi, and Lao Gui. Phew! That was already a lot there, and I didn't list them all out. However, I think these are the characters that are both the main characters and also the bigger characters in the making of the story. Now, because there's so many characters I listed, I'll save the trouble of reintroducing them, considering that what is already seen in the story is what is already spoken and said. I will say this though, that the amount of characters created for this game alone has proven to me the amount of depth and care placed in this story that gave the story life, and that each of these characters is what has given this the excitement and engagement necessary for us as players to truly find joy in playing above all else. The creation of these characters gave me little to have criticism for, as it overrides my love for each and every one of them. Which will lead me to the next subcategory, which is character developments. Using some of these characters that I listed, I will explain if I felt as though they had grown in character development or not, and if it should have been done better or kept as it is. So, here we go. The first I'll go for is Kazuma Kiryu. Now, Kiryu's story growth is the most in this game. I will say this because of how much this character had been through, and what just brought him to the end of the game where he bravely became what other Yakuza members call him, a true Yakuza. He had to see death occur before his eyes and the breakup with his sworn brother Nishiki in order for such developments to occur. Not to mention, he was almost always on the run to ensure that he isn't caught or killed by the Yakuza. Now, for someone who went through this much, it's proven to me that his character has become very well-rounded overall. There isn't necessarily needed for change in how this character was needed to grow. The creators did a fabulous job making Kiryu's story become something to be well remembered. Second is Goro Majima. This story is also just as engaging as we began with him being a moneymaker for the Yakuza and running his club. It quickly shaped him assassinating Makoto, only for the story to evolve something much more complicated. Well, technically he didn't assassinate her, but it was evolving to something much more bigger. Anyway, his character growth was also massive just as much as Kiryu was. From him becoming a slave to the Yakuza to become someone who stands for his own rights and will use his fist to fight in whatever means needed proves to me that Majima become who he is all because of his own sufferings and realizations along the way. I too feel as though his character growth has no changes either, and should stay as it should be. Next is Tetsuya Tachibana. Now he is one of the main supporting characters that had a big impact for the shaping of the story of Yakuza 0 and Kiryu's story. He has some character growth for him. The beginning was when he seemed as a stoic man who was very strong and powerful in his status and position. However, as you got to know him more, as he realized he had his own troubles and agonies he had to suffer through, then his own struggle whether to find his sister Makoto or not and facing it. The big break was when his search became the death of him, and he ended in being captured and killed by the Dojima family. This obviously was a small character growth, but for me I felt as though Tachibana would have stayed just a little bit longer story before his portion of play was done with it. However, I also understand that this character needed a character death in order for Kiryu and Makoto's story to evolve and become a new change for the both of them. I am a little mixed on this one, but I think I'll lean more towards keeping it mostly as it is because unfortunately his story had to end in tragedy. Next is Makimura Makoto. She's another key character in the stories of both Kiryu and Majima. She was the most center of what is happening and the conflict the story has brought about. Despite that, the creators used a very clever way of making her story just as intriguing, being as she had to live and strive on her own and blinded she began to have her own character growth and development when Tachibana died and she realized the indications of what has happened. She started with a bitter anger only for her to go into coma because of a loud glazed bullet wound on her. Luckily, she survived, but at the ending credits she was seen being much more brave and strong because she was able to start to see and stand on her own 2 feet against bullies. She had become a stronger woman and much more willing to stand up for others. In a way, I appreciated what the creators had done with her, and I will say that her story is to be kept the same. Next is Juan Ora. For this character, there is again a small character growth in the progress this character has. Well, at first there is little to know about his character in the beginning other than him working as Tachibana's underlining in the Tachibana real estate. One thing is very clear. As he got to know him more, he begins to reveal himself to Kiryu about his true feelings towards Makoto and what he knew of the relationship Tachibana had with Makoto. I found it to be a huge character plot change when Oda wanted to kill Makoto right then and there, only to change his mind and protect the two of them from their escape, just as Shibusawa went to fight with him. Obviously, it ended with Oda unable to survive the assault Shibusawa has inflicted. This had told me that Oda believed to no longer want to kill Makoto, but rather he is willing to protect both her and Kiryu all the way to the very end. It was a powerful message meant for a key character in the story. Personally, I think there's nothing too much need to change for Oda's story. However, giving Oda more of a story build-up could probably make it more interesting for the others who want to make it more engaging to his character. Next is Tsukasa Sagawa. Now for this character, he began off someone who was very strong grip towards Majima in his action. However, as the story progresses, you begin to see how his grip of control is much more tighter on Majima, until Majima found a way to break out of it. In fact, he was one of the more key characters in shaping Majima's story and growth. One thing I did enjoy about him is how he recognized when Majima chose not to listen anymore and go on his own realm, that he acknowledges that he has grown and become a true Yakuza. That is recognition and respect. I did appreciate that and felt as though Majima probably done that. Although Sagawa is less of a character growth, I did find him have a good small part to play in this part and felt as though the lack of character development is what makes him who he is. Next is Daisuke Kuze. Now for him, he was one of those characters where Kiryu constantly fights with, determined to take him down. Obviously, every time Kiryu fights Kuze, he loses and ends up on the ground. These moments of fighting has shaped Kuze a little bit, and he even acknowledges Kiryu to become a true Yakuza, with how much fighting prowess he has. I do appreciate his recognition that Kuze isn't all that bad. In fact, he is only following orders from Dojima. This in a way shows how much Kuze is an appreciated character, and how the many fights with Kiryu got him to be respected. I too respect him for who he is. Thus, there is little say on how his character development is made. Finally, I will do Akira Nishikiyama. This one was certainly an interesting one, and I view as though it's something I want to recognize, since Nishiki is probably one of the more heartbreaking moments between him and Kiryu. The moment Kiryu had chose to abandon him as his sworn brother because he didn't want to engage him anymore, got him silent for some time and his appearance was barely seen. However, there was a change in heart when Kiryu was in a rut, and he eventually chose to follow Kiryu until the very end. That extremely revolutionary and a character change for him. It shows that Nishiki is willing to do anything for his sworn brother without hesitation. I appreciate this and felt this is the beginning of a character development for him. The creators have done a good job in creating him to be very supportive, but also make him to be the sworn brother for Kiryu as meant to be. There is nothing I can change or want to be improved on that one. Sounds. This section I will be going over very briefly as the category is pretty general overall. I will say that the soundtrack created is very good. The atmosphere and a change in music has certainly given me the mood that needed to make this game happen. Since this is an older game, I do understand the sounds of entering a convenience store, place, or indoor place, and the sounds of running footsteps are a little less realistic. Still, it simulates what is in the game, and the creators who have made it adaptable to the modern engines have made it at least smoother and less janky in being in sync. I felt as though, however, the lip sync with the voice actors are a little off and would have been improved on a little bit more if done correctly and more accurately. However, for a ported old game to be something more modern, this is already quite an improvement. Compatibility. In this final section, I'll briefly talk about whether this game is compatible or not, and if it can handle most modern gaming computers. My answer is yes. This game is created to be able to handle most modern gaming computers extremely well. In fact, it doesn't take much to get this game running smoothly. With the adjustments to your settings, it can easily make this modern old game look very good and very playable. I certainly found it very smooth, and there are barely any errors or glitches other than what the old ported game probably has. Certainly found that the modern tweaks has improved the game and gave it something that's fun and enjoyable to play in. Overall, Yakuza 0 is an immensely enjoyable game to play. The story lore and interesting skill tree is what is most engaging to me. The combat here in this game is a little lacking and could have been improved on. Overall, this game is something that I have certainly found extremely enjoyable. Now, would I play it again? Absolutely. If I could go through the game again on my own time, I certainly would have without hesitation. This game is one of the few games so far that I will play again and still enjoy the lore and stories it has shaped to make you feel connected with the characters. It's certainly hard to beat, and what is the strongest of them all? Anyway, this is all I have for this video right here. I will certainly be doing more reviews like this in the future, and if you have any more suggestions for me or which ones you want me to review in the future, I'll certainly keep them in mind. Perhaps I'll play on my channel and write it as a review on my channel later down the road. Anyway, thank you all once again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye now!